Ryan Smith isn't on yet. That's who was missing.
Brian, Global Chat Group.
Yep, he is my lovely co-host, as I call him. He helps. There's Graham. He helps host this because he'll watch the waiting room and let people in. So while I'm talking, it's hard for me to talk and click buttons and all that. I try to be the genial host and let him handle admitting people to the room and questioning people who don't have a name or whatever, And so I really just normally he's here right on time, so I guess he's held up with something. Anyway, Brother Sorensen, good to see you as always.
Good to see you, Brother Douglas.
All right, glad to have you with us. Oh, one of our new participants. And see,
Is Alan driving his truck down the highway?
That is Alan Clark. Here's our mobile member. He's always in his truck. I just tell him to, listen, don't watch. I don't want him driving off the road at our expense. Brother Graham, we were talking about you, another Australian brother here. And where are you at, Graham?
I'm in Victoria at the moment.
Okay.
Oh, same state.
Okay. So you're not far from Brendan there. Okay.
Depends which part of Victoria it is. It is
okay.
1,000 kilometres across.
Okay.
Melbourne.
Whereabouts are you?
Melbourne.
Yeah, Melbourne.
And yourself, Graham?
Where are you at, Graham?
Fitzroy North.
Okay. Which is Melbourne. A suburb of Melbourne.
Oh, okay. Oh, y'all in the same city, roughly. That's good.
Yeah. It's only, this time of night, it's only a 20-minute drive away.
All right. Well, if you had to save on online expenses when you could drive to the house and y'all could both get on camera if you want.
We could.
I've been tempted to bring in my neighbor. He's a Mason, and he's not very tech savvy, and I've been tempted to ask him to come over and just sit in and watch because I don't know if he could get on his own. I've had a few brothers do that. It's like they'll bring in someone. And it's like he'll just sit there in their house with them because they couldn't manage to do the connection on their own, but they wanted part of it. But Brother Smallridge, good to see you. I guess
it's good to be seen, although my camera's off because I have some stuff going on here that I have to leave my camera off.
I understand.
But I wanted to listen in on the meeting here. This is the first time. You remember where you and I met before?
Yes. At Pocosin Lodge at their annual
Lodge. That's correct. That's correct.
Good to have you make an effort to join us. Someone actually listens to me when I say, "Hey, come join our Zoom meeting." No one ever does. So glad someone listened to me.
Yeah, well, sometimes my ear is open, but my brain is small and things fall out.
Yes, that happens. Yes. So we're glad you're with us, and we appreciate you at least wearing a shirt for the meeting, if not pants. That's
yes.
Pants are optional for the Zoom meetings.
Yeah, it's the work I'm doing that
okay. I get you. All right, Brother Oliveris, good to have you with us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, I suspect Brian's not going to be here because he's normally here at this time. So bear with me if I have to go and let somebody in the door here. I got my other screen. I got two monitors here, so I got all the other stuff here, and then we're full screen for this, so I can see the pictures of people because I can at least see everybody. So I just got to keep one eye on the participant list. Zoom, I have to say, as far as I've been doing this, Brendan, since 2020, doing these Zoom meetings, and of course it started under COVID, and I had to become proficient in online meetings for work and whatever, and I've used pretty much most of the major ones that are on the market. I've used for work, or I've used the free version to get a feel for what works. I looked at Google, I've looked at Facebook, I've looked at all of them, and Zoom is the only one that is, you don't have, I mean, Teams is probably about there now, but that has overhead. Zoom is the only one that I found that is the easiest to let non-members in. Like Google Video is good, but everyone has to have a Gmail account. Facebook Meeting is good, but everybody has to be on Facebook. I wanted something where I could just shoot you a link and you don't have to sign in, and just make the bar as low as possible for someone to attend. But as far as functionality, I have to say Zoom is really good. All these pop-up windows you can just drag to another screen or another area. And Jonathan went out, came in again. So I have all these windows open over here, the chat and everything, so I can keep an eye on that. So yeah, I gotta say overall Zoom has all the functionality we need. And it has a whiteboard. I can load up a whiteboard if we wanted to draw stuff, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I like Zoom.
Yeah, it's worked well. And it's only like $170 a year now. So, and the lodge reimburses me for it. So it's about what I pay for web hosting. So it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
And I use it to death. I use it for Scottish Rite. I've used it for Royal Arch. I've used it for other lodges. I've used it for practices. It's like if somebody has to have a Zoom meeting, it's like, I got you. Just tell me what day you want it. I'll send a link to everyone. And it's it's good to offer that because it's nothing for me to host it. I've done it so much. So
Yeah, that my Grand Lodge pays for my account.
well, that's nice of them. Just
I
for you,
thought so.
everybody.
No, just for me.
Really? Okay. You are special.
No, some of the HQ people have one, but I got one as well.
Oh, okay. That's good. I don't know what happened. Maybe I should sit up straight. I don't know. I had myself in frame and now I'm shrinking. Yeah, there we are. Well, I mean, you see people, huh? What's that, Graham?
I said that might be a good thing.
Yeah, I know. Let me just shrink back. Well, it's funny because on my company laptop with the customer, they provide me with a laptop and it's very restricted what software can be on it. So I can't put Logic Capture on it, which is a free program from Logitech that lets you Zoom and do all these other things. So I got on my computer. So every time we have a company meeting, I'm like this big because it's the camera just I can't Zoom at all. So it's like, well, you get to see my whole house. Here you go. I'm just this tiny little figure in the back. So let's see. Brother Ade wanted to say hello to you. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing yourself?
Yeah, very good. Good to have you with us.
Great.
All the regular attendees here. So it's after 10. It's after 10 o'clock. Let me go and do my official greeting to everybody. Hello and welcome to the Virginia Research Lodge's unstated meeting here on Zoom. I'm posting in the chat. If you don't have this, I think probably everybody in this room already has it, but we have a link to our Facebook page if you're not already a member, where we have all of our research papers and meetings like this. Our lodge website where we have all of our papers and other things. Our YouTube channel where you can watch when I get to them. I think this will be the 4th video I haven't uploaded, so shame on me. But I do have over 30 of these Zoom meetings up on YouTube for you all to look at, and then my email if you want to be on our mailing list. But I think everybody is a regular. So, but if you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We appreciate it. So that's basically what I have. Anybody got anything they want to bring up? Anyone want to share before I go to Brendan here? We're just kind of chatting here.
I'm in no hurry.
Okay, yep, that's quite all right. We're doing good. I did want to
say when you say share something, do you mean anything related to masonry or just anything specific?
If it's quick, if you want to bring up something, you go right ahead.
Well, one thing is quick. For me, I recently the Worshipful Master Lodge has appointed me as the LEO, or the Lodge Education Officer.
Congratulations.
Thanks. And I'm fairly excited about that due to the fact that education excites me. And I have a 3-prong approach I'm planning on doing in regards to it. The first one obviously is the education, whatever it might be, is released in the meeting. And then there's follow-up with that. And the 2 follow-up prongs I'm super excited about because it entails some of my creative side. And that's all I wanted to say is, be on the lookout for some of that creative side stuff.
Cool.
Because I think it'll be great and it will hopefully enhance the brothers' ability to just receive education. I'm not so sure about how to test and confirm understanding, but when you receive it in specific ways, sometimes it can be retained a little bit. So just excited about that.
Excellent. That's good. It takes enthusiasm. You have to be enthusiastic to achieve stuff. Almost everything I've done here, is just I get a crazy idea and I say, I wonder if I could do that, and I just go ahead and do it, and everybody says, hey, good job. So it's always easier to seek forgiveness than to ask permission. So if you want to do something for your lodge, just start doing it until somebody tells you to stop. And, and so far they haven't told me to stop. They don't do much to help, but they don't generally stop me. So all of this stuff I'm doing online, especially, I come up with an idea, I try and do it, and if it works, I keep doing it. So, and I'm still figuring out as I go. So
I think it's commendable that there's a lodge education officer that has a plan.
that is good. Yes. So many, it's like, oh, well, we got to point.
Yeah, no, I've got a job. That's it. I've got a title.
We got to point a DEO. We got to point a LEO. We got to point a LIW. And do they do anything? No. I was LEO of my lodge for a couple of years, and the DEO was all of the district education officer was all enthused and said, you need to. This is great. Can you set up a page on the website of all of the LEOs in our district, and help coordinate, and we can trade information and work together. And I said, sure. And I put it all together, and I sent emails to all the other LEOs and all that, and not one of them did anything or said anything. And when I meet them on occasion, it's like, so what are you doing as LEO? What are you doing to promote education in your lodge? Oh, well, they just don't. It's like, what? I don't know, man.
Well,
That
you know what, Chris?
Yeah.
What's interesting about that, Chris, is the manner in communication, right? If people communicate.
Your mic's kind of moving around.
No, that was somebody else's, I think.
Oh, okay.
That's I can't see the gentleman. He's wearing a red blanket there.
Oh, Graham, are you making
Right.
noise? I'm gonna go to meet you.
Yeah. So
Go ahead and mute if you want.
the manner in which we communicate. So if you just send an email to folks, not everyone might receive the message very well. There's the emailing, there's the calls, there's
Yep.
the going up in person and getting in their face a little bit to get reactions and or just at least an understanding as to where they stand. And
Yep.
so it's disappointed if you have reached out to folks and you didn't get the response that you were hoping for, right? It's communication is a funny thing. That's for sure.
Yep. Yeah, I'm still waiting for the day somebody walks into our lodge and says, I saw your tweet and I came to the meeting. So it's just not, I mean, I give a talk on social media and masonry, and I talk about the different ways, of reaching out to people. Facebook seems to work the best among us. And there are people who come to meetings. We have a lodge website, and we just switched to a different website so we can pay dues on it.
Too.
And the only reason we switched is because the medium I had couldn't take money. And they said, we want to have someone else host it and do it where it's based on collecting dues. I'm like, hey, more power to you. Go ahead, and I can give him whatever he wants to put on the news site. And a lot of it didn't go over, but mainly it was to so people could go to the website, see upcoming events, and pay dues. And it was designed for phones. So when you look at it on your phone, it's clear. I primarily work in SharePoint. SharePoint is absolutely horrible on a phone, and I realize that. And there's not many ways around it. So all the different websites I've worked on, we've kind of moved away from communicating through the website and listing events. We used to really try and do that, but it didn't seem to be reaching people. Facebook and email seemed to be the best way we found to let everybody know about upcoming events. And so it's just sort of funny. Like, I have Twitter accounts for several lodges, and almost, I was putting stuff out regularly, and it's like, I'm not reaching anyone in my lodge. Like Scottish Rite. I have a Scottish Rite Valley I maintain a Twitter account for, and I have over 500 followers, and 480 of them are in England. I don't know why. And there's like one other person who was actually in our valley who had a Twitter account who was following us. And it's like, well, why do I bother maintaining Twitter and keeping it current if I'm not reaching the members of the valley? There wasn't any point. So the only Twitter I use anymore is the Virginia Research Lodge when I do the Facebook, the research papers. I always tweet them out as well. And that's about the only thing we're doing on Twitter, but people do like them and they respond to them. So I'm reaching an audience that's out there, not necessarily members of the body. So if you're trying to reach the members of your Masonic body, as David was alluding to, is find the medium that reaches them that you're getting a response to. And if that has to be phone calls or emails or Facebook or website, do that. And that was the whole point of the paper anyway, but it's very true. It's like, if you're not reaching people, don't invest energy in maintaining something that no one is watching, because you're just wasting your time. Honestly, you're not reaching people. But these things, the research papers and these other things we're doing, my audience is not the members of my lodge. It's you, the broader Masonic community out there in the world, and you all are responding, and people are taking advantage of it. So it's worth doing that. So, anywho, I'm going to go ahead and hand this off to Brother Brendan. Let him introduce himself and tell us what lodge he belongs to and whatever else he wants to share before he starts his program. But Brother Brendan, take it away.
Thanks, Chris. My name's Brendan Kyne. I'm the secretary of
Sorry,
Victoria.
and I'm sorry. Do you need to share anything? Do you have any PowerPoint?
Yeah, I've got a PowerPoint. So if you want to give me share screen,
I want to do that before we start. So
I can share that as well.
Okay. Yeah, I always forget to ask that.
That's all right.
Okay. There you go. All right, now you can start. Go ahead.
I'm the secretary of.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I muted you. I was trying to mute everybody else. One more time. Okay, this is why we have editing on YouTube. Okay, for the first time, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Brother Brendan Kyne, who is our guest speaker for the day. And this time he will try to introduce himself without me interrupting him. Go ahead, Brendan.
Thanks, Chris. Currently, I'm the secretary of our Victorian Lodge of Research, and I do have currently the grand title of the Deputy Grand Superintendent of Education for our Grand Lodge. The two of those keeps me largely busy doing stuff like this all around the world. I think it's fun, actually, that we can do this. I regularly go to two in Canada, one in Ontario and one in Nova Scotia every week. And they get over 100 people every one of their weekly Zoom speaking sessions. So I'm just amazed how well this Zoom week works for bringing us together all around the world. Who would have thought it 2 years ago? So I'll just quickly share a PowerPoint with you. Don't you love how professionally I did that? So this morning, I thought we'd have a look at Freemasonry in the colony of Victoria. We'll start off with a little bit of how Freemasonry came to Australia, and then we'll zero it into the state of Victoria, where Graham and myself are at the moment. So I'd like to present to you this morning a bit of a brief overview of the more quirkier bits of Masonic history from Australia, and more particularly the state of Victoria. The quirky bits, those instances and events that kind of show human foibles. And in the 1880s in Victoria, in the 1800s in Victoria, that's basically English chaps behaving badly. But just some examples of what I mean by quirky bits. The South Yarra Lodge, and it used to meet, you can see there from a Masonic guide from the 1860s, it used to meet at the New Bridge Hotel in South Yarra, and that's the New Bridge Hotel there with the car out the front. And for those of you who know Melbourne, that's the corner of Toorak Road and Chapel Street. Now, this is one of my favourite stories that occurred at the installation ceremony for the South Yarra Lodge in 1863. It's an English Constitution lodge, and as many of you would know, under the English Masonic tradition, it's the retiring master's right to install his successor. However, the worshipful master-elect asked the provincial Grand Master of Victoria if he would come along and do the installation ceremony for him. Unfortunately, Captain Standish, who we'll get to later, couldn't attend and sent one of his deputies along. All of this was totally unbeknown to the outgoing worshipful master, who demanded his right to install his successor and refused to vacate the chair. But luckily, brotherly love ensured in the end, and he was forcibly removed from the chair and ejected from the lodge room. Caused a lot of trouble at the time too. I like the turn of phrase here, Board of General Purpose meeting, their minutes. It's one of the most interesting reasons and turns of phrase for a brother being charged with unmasonic conduct and deprived of his privileges. And I'll quote the minutes was, the brother was found guilty of having entered the house of a brother during the brother's absence and stolen the affections of his wife. But I also found that I'm looking through this stuff, there was an unusual event, smoke nights. Once you get to the early 1900s, these were a real thing. It's an event today that would be considered definitely socially unacceptable, but I suppose it gives us a perspective of the mores of the time. But in 1932, I've just jumped forward a little bit, the brethren were reminded of their invitation to attend a smoke night to see off the Grand Master Lord Somers at the end of his term of office. And lodges regularly during that period had father and son smoke nights where you get together with your sons in a Masonic building and just smoke a bazillion cigarettes. I mean, doesn't that sound like a fun night? But it wasn't just Masons. You look through the newspapers at the time, sporting clubs, church wardens, bowling associations, friendly societies. They were all having these smoke nights. And as you can see for that little clip there, the ancient Free Gardeners had a smoke night in 1915. It was a successful night, but I noticed it was held in the Fire Brigade Hall. So I don't know if that's sort of symptomatic of what happened at their regular smoke.
Brandon,
Yes.
would this include cigars and pipes and such, or do you know it's
I
exclusively
have
cigarettes?
no idea whether it was exclusively cigarettes or what
I would gather, just a suggest that it was more likely cigars and possibly pipes, more so than cigarettes. Because cigars are quite popular among gentlemen. So just we don't know.
I'd agree, but
That's what I picture when you say smoke night is a bunch of men smoking cigars. But just put it out there for thought.
Yeah, I reckon there would have been a lot of cigarettes involved as well. 'Cause, you know, I don't know how many cigars you could smoke in a night. But, I just found that really curious. And the Donald Masonic Lodge building. Now, in rural Victoria, in the 1930s, we find the local Masonic Lodge is very much part of the social fabric of regional towns. And this aspect is evident in 1931 when we glimpse the response of rural Masons to the threatening and frightening times confronting them during the Great Depression. And in 1931, this fear of the threat posed by the Catholics, the communists, and the unemployed spread across rural Victoria. Now, this is a totally unfounded fear, but trenches were dug across the roads of these small towns. Farmhands, hapless farmhands, were given a rifle, shoved in a ditch, and told to shoot anything that comes around the corner. The local doctor, a Catholic, was seen loading crates into his car. Turns out they were tomatoes, but at the time it all added to the sense of mystery and suspense. And at the western town of Donald in March 1931, a state of high alert gripped the town as they waited for the Catholics and the communists to make their move. The Masonic Lodge, meeting on the second Thursday of the month, placed armed guards outside the perimeter of the lodge building for fear of Catholic treachery. I just find all that utterly fascinating. And just in that time period, here's the membership list of one of the lodges. Now, this, I assume the same happened in America. After the First World War, you had a huge influx of returned servicemen joining Freemasonry. The same happened here, so that small lodges overnight suddenly became huge lodges. Now, that's just 3 pages of about a 6-page fold-out. the lodge in the end by the late 1920s had over 400 members. So to me, that sort of explained why here in Victoria around the 1920s, we start to build these enormous lodge buildings. And there's the reason why. If you've got 400 members of the lodge, even if 200 members turn up, you still need a large lodge room to accommodate them. And that's why we find today when lodges aren't as big, we have these cavernous lodge rooms. But the interesting thing about the Windsor Lodge is that from the occupation of those joining at the time, we find that over 50% of them were from a clerical, management or business background. So it's not surprising to find that from 1934, the minutes of the lodge were typed on a typewriter. Now, this is cutting-edge technology. The process involved cutting out each sequentially numbered page in the minute book, typing the minutes of the lodge meeting, and then gluing the pages back in the minute book. And I don't know if you've ever looked through lodge minute books, but up until the last 20 years, the majority of them were handwritten. And these guys in the 1930s are typing their minutes. There's the first page, and well, the first time they did it, it was kind of close. You kind of wonder who was taking the notes. Was it the secretary or not? Because they've typed it up and said it was a 3rd degree they did that night. Someone's come along and corrected it and said, no, it was a 2nd degree, actually, 3rd degree, 2nd degree. They all look the same after a while. So that's what I mean by the quirky bits, the unusual bits, the bits that perhaps make you smile. So getting back to Freemasonry coming to Australia and Victoria. As you can see on the right-hand side of your screen there, I have a picture of Australia superimposed on the top of continental USA, of course, not counting Alaska. And as you can see, we're really not that much smaller. And as you can see from the larger picture on the left, the map isn't exactly 100% accurate. That was Captain Cook's map in 1770, and down the bottom there, as you can see, we have a separate state called Tasmania, but that drawing has it connected to the mainland. For the point of tonight, this morning, it might be useful to point out that initially the colony of New South Wales was pretty much the right-hand side of Australia. As you can see there, it says New South Wales down the side. So when I'm talking about New South Wales initially, that's what I'm talking about, the whole sort of eastern seaboard of Australia. But anyway, in 1770, Captain James Cook and his HMS Endeavour reaches Australia and New Zealand with Freemason Joseph Banks on board. This guy basically funded the whole tour anyway, so he wasn't the only Freemason on board this expedition, but because he was the one who was funding the whole expedition, he gets the title of the first Freemason to set foot in Australia. Now, you'd think the guy that is funding this pretty much a scientific expedition, and if I just digress for a moment, the public reason for Cook's journey in 1770 was to go to Tahiti and to map the transit of Venus. And there you can see a couple of them, their drawings of the transit of Venus. There was another vessel on the other side of the world doing exactly the same thing at exactly the same time. And they were using those calculations for a bit of triangulation to improve navigation. Now, you'd think that Joseph Banks would be interested in that sort of thing. But I think he had other distractions on the day. For his journal on that day, he gives a passing mention to the transit of Venus, along with a visit from 3 handsome women. Somehow I don't think he paid all that much attention to the transit of Venus. Anyway, 18 years later, in 1788, the first fleet of British ships arrives at Botany Bay in New South Wales to establish a penal colony, the first non-Indigenous colony on the Australian mainland. And that day today is still commemorated by Indigenous Australians as Invasion Day. Now, for the first 20 years of the colony of New South Wales, which was the reign of the first 4 governors, Freemasonry was definitely not encouraged. In fact, it was banned. Not surprising, really, given the governors were in charge of a penal colony on the other side of the world that included political prisoners, in particular those pesky Irish Catholics, so that they were naturally going to be suspicious and a little wary of any unauthorised meetings held in private or secret. Now, the first documented, that's the crucial word there, documented lodge meeting in New South Wales was on a boat harboured in Port Jackson. On the 17th of September 1802, a lodge meeting took place upon La Naturaliste, one of the 3 ships of Captain Nicolas Bourdain's French expeditionary force. And at a lodge meeting, a Captain Anthony Fencamp was initiated, and a document certifying this event is now held at the Mitchell Library in Sydney. It's the oldest document relating to Freemasonry in Australia, so that's 1802. However, this certificate was issued under the Grand Orient of France and was for a Rose Croix degree. And it was a Grand Orient military lodge. Now, it's assumed that Captain Fencamp was a Master Mason at the time, but there's no record of him ever participating in any Masonic activity after this event. So what was he doing there? The general consensus is he was spying, trying to find out what the French were up to. But anyway, the first documented meeting in the colony of New South Wales is French. Now, in 1810, on the 1st of January, Lachlan Macquarie becomes the governor of New South Wales. Freemasons' fortunes in the colony of New South Wales changed with the appointment of Macquarie. He was a Freemason who saw the benefit of Masonic brotherhood for creating fraternal bonds amongst the military officers, colonial officials, and other men of substance. Australian historian described Macquarie as one of those Freemasons who liked polished manhood and good friends more than any arcane knowledge. I kind of like that word, polished manhood. So to cut a long story short, August 1820 is when we had the first warranted lodge warranted to meet in Australia. And that was the Australian Social Lodge, number 260 on the Irish Constitution. It's pretty low, actually, when you consider that, Freemasonry started 100 years earlier. The first lodge in Australia is numbered 260 on the Irish records. Anyway, Brother John Stephen arrived in New South Wales in 1828 as a police magistrate, and he wrote at the time, now he's an Englishman, "From all the information I've been able to procure, I'm sorry to say I cannot give a flattering description of the craft. The lodges which are held here receive their authority from the Grand Lodge of Ireland, and the business of them is not conducted in a pleasant, agreeable manner." John Stevenson actually went on to form the first English lodge in New South Wales and also the first English lodge in the colony of Victoria. Now, speaking of the colony of Victoria, Melbourne, the capital of Victoria, in 1840 was just a few years old, and that time had no city council, few buildings, no public meeting places, but it did have a large number of hotels. To occupy the time, the residents of Melbourne formed many societies, such as the Odd Fellows, the Free Gardeners, the Manchester Unity, the St Patrick's Society, the Rechabites, just hundreds of them, and of course, Freemasons. Now, the British Act of Parliament separating the rich pastoral lands of the Port Phillip district, also known as Australia Felix, into the colony of Victoria was signed, and the enabling legislation was in July 1851. And at that time, when the state of Victoria was carved out of New South Wales, there were 6 lodges here. 4 in Melbourne, 2 English, 1 Irish and 1 Scottish, 1 at Geelong and 1 at Portland. Now, just to fill you in where we are, if you look at the little map of Australia up there. Victoria is right down in the bottom southeast corner. To give you an idea, it's about 1,000 kilometres from the east coast right across to the South Australian border, and it's about 500 kilometres directly north. And as I said, there were 6 lodges at that time. However, any dreams of a quiet colony based on a sort of rural aristocracy were short-lived. For at the same time as that enabling legislation was being signed, inspired by the California gold rush, prospectors found gold in Victoria at Clunes, Warrandyte, and in particular Ballarat. And as you can see from that map there, Melbourne is at the top of Port Phillip Bay. Geelong's kind of down near the mouth of it, and Ballarat's just over here. Now, a lot of the story this morning takes place around the Ballarat area. So by the end of 1851, news of these gold discoveries spread far and wide, leading to a huge influx of people from all around the world, hoping to make their fortunes on the gold field. The alluvial plain at Ballarat proved to be extremely rich gold discovery, initially causing the towns of Melbourne and Geelong to be emptied of all able-bodied men. However, the rugged life of the goldfields soon deterred all but the adventurous and the hardy. Nevertheless, because of the gold rush, lodges multiplied in Ballarat, Bendigo, Castlemaine, and Masonic lodges also appeared in the smaller goldfield towns such as Daylesford and Creswick. Now, these goldfield lodges were either of the Irish or English constitution, with one exception. Now, what you've got there is a painting of the Ballarat goldfields by an Austrian-born artist, Mr. Eugene von Gerard. He came out here for many years and captured lots of landscape scenes of Australia at the time. Anyway, in 1852, he journeyed from London to the colony of Victoria on the Windermere with a group of Frenchmen. They arrived in Victoria at Geelong on the 24th of December, 1852. Now, in early 1853, one of the Frenchmen on the Windermere, a Jean-Marie Balaguy, established at Ballarat a lodge named La Remor d'Or de Lucius, or the Golden Bough of Lucius, working under the auspices of the Grand Lodge of the Rite of Memphis. A certificate was issued to Monsieur Balaguy on the 28th of August, 1855, as the Sovereign Grand Master and founder of the Memphis Rite in Australia. And from a booklet published in 1812, we find the following statement. In 1853, the Black Hill Lodge was created under the French Constitution and met in a spacious tent at the foot of Black Hill. Now, Brother Balaguy may indeed found his fortunes on the Ballarat goldfields, for the Ballarat Times for the 17th of March 1856, there appeared an advertisement stating that the meeting and banquet of La Remor d'Or de Lucius Lodge of Freemasons would be held at the Balaguy Hotel at Black Hill. So it appeared the lodge no longer had to meet in a spacious tent, but could now hold their meetings in their Grand Master's hotel. Now, in our, I'll loosely say our Grand Lodge library, and we won't go there, we have a certificate issued by La Remor d'Or de Lucius Lodge. Interestingly, the only reason why we have this certificate was that in the 1960s, a Colonel Melvin Fanchuk from the Rosedale Lodge in Missouri, number 404, sent our Grand Secretary a letter and said, "I've got a copy of this. I believe it's one of your lodges. Do you want it?" And luckily, our Grand Lodge said yes. Now, the certificate is set out in French on one side and English down the other. It was issued in the name of the Sovereign Grand Master of the Order of the Empire of Australia from Memphis and dated the 3rd of December 5859. Now, the Rite of Memphis used a creation year of 4004. Now, there's 4 official stamps on that certificate. Over here at the bottom, on the bottom left-hand side of your screen, is the stamp for the Chancellery of the Order of Memphis. The next is the Lodge stamp, which is a circular stamp with the name of the lodge surrounding a golden bow. Over on the far right-hand side is a very faded seal that appears to be the Secretary's seal, and the more ornate seal in the middle is the seal of the Grand Master of the Empire of Memphis in Australia, Jean-Marie Balaguy. Now, Brother Balaguy has signed it as the Sovereign Grand Master. Brother A.E. Collis, 53rd degree, as the Worshipful Master of the Lodge. There's 13 other signatures on there that we know from other sources. However, 5 brethren have written 46th degree after their name and 1 33rd degree. However, there's never any suggestion among the surviving records to indicate that this lodge ever worked any degree above the 3rd degree. Now, the lodge happily continued to work throughout the next couple of years, with many prominent members of the Ballarat community joining what was then the only working lodge on the Ballarat goldfields. The Victoria Lodge of Ballarat was not constituted until late September 1855. Thus, for the first 2.5 years of this lodge's existence, the Lodge Laramore de Lucius, the 7th lodge formed in the state of Victoria, it had active Freemasonry on the Ballarat goldfields all to themselves. Now, as mentioned in the Ballarat Times for the 17th of March 1856, there appeared a notice for the ordinary meeting, election, and obligatory banquet of Laramore de Lucius Lodge to be held at the Balaguy Hotel at Black Hill on the 23rd of March. The notice was in English and French, with the English notice signed by the Lodge Secretary, Dr. Henry Mount, and the French notice signed by the Grand Secretary of the Order of Memphis in Australia, Brother Delahaye. You'll also notice just below there in the houses and land sales that the proprietor of the Balaguy Hotel is selling his establishment. It's interesting that as the story progresses, you may see why. Not long after the notice appeared in the newspapers, rumours began to spread that the Black Hill Lodge was spurious and decidedly irregular. Now, these rumours caused considerable consternation for at the time because many prominent members of the Ballarat community had joined the only lodge that was working at the time. The local doctor was the secretary. Now, all of these members were blissfully unaware that the Memphis Rite was not recognised either by the Grand Lodge of France or the United Grand Lodge of England. So after much correspondence and consternation, the Board of General Purposes of the Provincial Grand Lodge of New South Wales, meeting on the 4th of August 1856, resolved that having come to the knowledge of this board that certain members of persons styling themselves Masons have established at Ballarat a meeting called a lodge under the title Laramore de Lucius, said holden under the Grand Lodge of Memphis, and having come to their knowledge that the said Grand Lodge is not a legally constituted body of Masons, but a spurious order working under the assumed authority of Count Cagliostro. This board do cause these facts to be communicated without delay to all lodges in the province, more especially the Lodge of Victoria Ballarat, urging them not to recognise either collectively or individually the so-called lodge or any person initiated thereto, and to use the utmost diligence in preventing them or any of them from being acknowledged by any Masonic lodge in these colonies. Whew, stern stuff. So what did the members of Laramore de Lucius Lodge do? Well, they met on the 1st of January 1857, and there's the first page of the minute book of Ballarat Lodge. And it was basically the French members, and they resolved to seek an English warrant for a new lodge to be called the Ballarat Lodge. Now, it's interesting that they obviously now want to be seen as regular Masons, so they've removed all reference to Memphis. They've even changed the date to a creation date of 4,000 years, so they've dropped the extra 4 years. But you'll notice a couple of them have put Mishram after their name. Now, Mishram was held in no better esteem than Memphis. And in theory, having that after their name, their application should have been rejected, but who's going to quibble? So with the support of the newly formed Victoria Lodge, the newly formed Provincial Grand Lodge of Victoria wrote to Brother Lindsay Richardson, the worshipful master of the Victoria Lodge, stating that herein enclosed is a dispensation for the Ballarat Lodge, late Larimore de Lucius, and request that you'll have the kindness to take the trouble of opening the lodge in properly constituted ancient form. I've informed Mr. Emile Poole, with whom I've been in correspondence respecting the dispensation that has been sent to your call. Thus, the Ballarat Lodge number 1019, the English Constitution, was formed on the 27th of July, 1857 at the George Hotel, but it was still all but in name only Larimore de Lucius Lodge. So basically the new Provincial Grand Lodge of Victoria had on one hand notice of an irregular lodge, and on the other hand the request for an English warrant. So they just went, easy, we'll cross out the name, problem solved. So I can't think of any other instance where an an irregular French lodge within a matter of about 8 months becomes an English lodge. Nothing else was changed except the name. Just find that amazing. Anyway, as I briefly mentioned, the Provincial Grand Lodge of Victoria was formed in 1857, 6 years after the formation of the colony. On Monday, the 9th of March at Hockings Hotel Assembly Rooms in Elizabeth Street, and Captain Sir Andrew Clark was installed as the Provincial Grand Master of Victoria. And there's a picture of the assembly rooms there where his installation was held. However, at the time of being elevated to the esteemed rank of Grand Master, he was a Master Mason and Senior Deacon of his lodge. So during the ceremony, it was necessary to pause whilst Clark was taken into a convenient room and made an installed master on site. Captain Clark arrived in Australia in 1847 after a stint in New Zealand with the Governor, Sir George Grey. In 1849, found employment in the state of Tasmania in Hobart as a private secretary to the Lieutenant Governor, Sir William Denison. Clark wrote at the time, it gives us an insight into the man and perhaps society as well, when he said, I'm trying to seize a golden opportunity which may ultimately lead not alone to wealth, but that which I prize still higher, the establishment of a name, character. Oh, well, he did that. Not wishing to denigrate Brother Clark, he went on to a distinguished career, attained the rank of a Lieutenant General, was appointed a commander of the Bath in 1869, a Knight Commander of the Order of St. Michael and St. George in 1873, a Commander in the Indian Empire in 1877, and a Grand Commander of the Order of St. Michael and George in 1855. And there he is with all his bling. Very much an English chap. However, as to his term as Provincial Grand Master, he appointed his provincial team, delegated all the functions of his office to his deputy, Francis Thomas Gell, and set off for a brief visit to London, never to return to Australia. The Argus newspaper for the 11th of August 1858 was less than complimentary, observing that Despite his credible start, that promise has not been but half fulfilled, and it is not apprehended anywhere that the colony will suffer material loss or inconvenience due to his absence. Now, Brother Clark's appointment as Provincial Grand Master was obviously based on social standing and not any rank or experience in Freemasonry. For heaven's sake, he was a chap. And the same can be said for his successor, Captain Frederick Charles Standish. And there's a picture of Captain Standish. So Captain Standish, a standard bibliography, usually states things like he was a gentleman, a soldier, and an inveterate gambler. He was born in Lancashire in 1824, educated at the Catholic Prior Park College in Bath, and then the Royal Military Academy, spent 9 years in the Royal Artillery and the staff of the Lieutenant Governor of Ireland. He belonged to a high-class county family, had received a liberal education, and possessed many natural gifts that placed him in a higher position of public respect and favour. Now, he arrived on the Bendigo goldfields in 1853, tried mining for a short while, and then in 1854 was appointed Assistant Goldfield Commissioner. He was a foundation member of the Golden Lodge in Bendigo in 1854, and in 1858 was appointed Chief Commissioner of Police in Victoria, a position he held until 1880. Just worth remembering that again for this story. He's the Chief Commissioner of Police. As the Commissioner, he introduced positive plans, opened 50 police stations around the state, was famous for the capture of the infamous Ned Kelly gang, urged the government to stamp out sly grub shops, describing them as a flagrant evil. He was also a founding member of the Victoria Club. And just to cap it off, in May 1861, he was installed as the Provincial Grand Master, English Constitution for Victoria, a position he also held until the 1880s. He was chairman of the Victorian Racing Club and is credited with forming the idea to hold a horse race and calling it the Melbourne Cup. Seems a rather upright gentleman, doesn't he? What about the other side of the coin? Well, Standish was a member of an English upper-class family, the son of a Whig dandy and the chum of George IV. He enjoyed life round the clubs and theatres of London, dining, dancing and gambling. Initiated in an Irish lodge on retirement as a captain, Standish soon had to flee England when gambling debts forced him to escape under an assumed name to Australia. He arrived on the Bendigo goldfields in 1853 and applied to be a police constable, again under an assumed name, but was rejected because he was too gentlemanly. He unsuccessfully tried gold prospecting, ginger beer making, the sly grog trade, and before he was appointed the Assistant Commissioner of the Goldfields in Bendigo. And as I said, he was appointed in 1858 as the Chief Commissioner of Police in Victoria. And Ken Crouch, the author, suggests that since Standish had no policing experience or aptitude for the job, he was appointed more from his gentlemanly credentials. So once he was appointed the Chief Commissioner of Police, I'll just go back there, sorry. Chief Commissioner of Police, he made his home at the Melbourne Club, where he was known as a notorious gambler and procurer of prostitutes for parties within the club. Now, the Melbourne Club was formed in 1838 as a London club for the gentlemen of Melbourne. Cards, drinking, dining, billiards, cigars, and what they quaintly described at the time as horizontal refreshment. Now, Standish shared the good life with Melbourne's gentleman elite. At a later parliamentary inquiry, evidence was given of a dinner Standish gave in which all the women present were naked and the chairs were covered in black velvet, the better to show off the whiteness of their skin. Now, Standish was installed as the Provincial Grand Master in Victoria in 1861, although he too was never an installed master like his predecessor. Now, whilst urging the government regarding sly grog shops, the police hospital in St Kilda Road, Melbourne, operated the largest sly grog business. Standish felt that specific police training was a waste of time, and the inept behaviour of the police force during his period in office was humiliating, led to loss of lives, and resulted in a royal commission. Legend has it that the hunt for the Ned Kelly gang was suspended while the weights for the Melbourne Cup were declared.
Hey,
Now,
excuse me, Brendan, can you explain what you mentioned the sly grog shop? I didn't quite catch that. Yeah, tell us what that is.
The equivalent would be for you guys bootleggers.
Okay. Sly grog, is that what you said?
Yes, sly grog, which means
Grog on the sly. Okay, got it.
Yep. So
Okay.
they're basically selling illegal alcohol. And
When was we have prohibition here in the US. When was it banned in Australia at that time?
No, but what these guys are doing is after hours, the whole thing, anytime you want alcohol, go down the police station and you can get a crate of alcohol, no problem. So it wasn't banned here. It's just that you're able to get it, 24/7, which you weren't supposed to be able to do. So they also had hotels that were called sly grog shops because, after a certain time, the hotels had to close. But if you knew the right ones, you just went round the back and they were open, basically. So during Standish's time as the Provincial Grand Master and the Chief Commissioner of Police, Prince Alfred, the brother of Dirty Bertie, Prince Alfred, the Duke of Edinburgh, visited Australia from 1867 to 1868. And there's the Prince arriving in Australia. On his arrival in Melbourne, the Duke and his colleagues, Standish took them to the Melbourne Club for introductions and drinks, and then onward to a nearby upmarket brothel. The Duke of Edinburgh became such a regular at the house of Madame Fraser that some men stole the coach builder's sign that read, "By the appointment of His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh," and nailed it over the door to the brothel. Under Standish's watch, Madame Fraser's house and the Casino de Venice, don't you just love that name, along with a couple of other dubious upmarket establishments, operated with impunity. Now, the Duke's 12-day visit to Melbourne turned into 6 weeks of public drunken debauchery. Under Standish's mentorship and guidance, the Prince's visit to Melbourne was described as, and there's the Prince just there, our brief dream, and these are headlines from newspapers at the time. Our brief dream of royalty is ended. Alfred's record of immorality has put to shade the achievements in the same direction of other members of the royal family. Kind of reminds you of that. What is it? Prince Andrew, the current member of the royal family. They've been doing this stuff for years. Alfred's mission to popularise the royalty in the colonies entirely and singularly failed. Record of immorality, most degrading forms of sexual excess, royal rascal and rogue, a disgrace to the name and fame of England. Those that enjoyed the Duke's patronage claimed that he paid for nothing. Mrs. Fraser, the madam, stated that he used her house, her cellar, and her people and never paid. In fact, he bilked me for everything. Of course, after he left Melbourne and went on to Sydney, all of this whole event was completely forgotten and swept under the carpet once he goes to Sydney and gets shot by an enraged Irishman. So what can we conclude about Grandmaster Standish? His hedonistic lifestyle and corrupt practices caused irreparable damage to the image of the police force, as well as affecting internal morale. According to Superintendent Stadler, Standish did not possess a high sense of duty and was too much a man of pleasure to devote himself seriously to the work of his office. It was Standish, Commissioner of Police and Provincial Grand Master, who took the Duke of Edinburgh on a tour of the better-known brothels and drinking establishments on his visit to Melbourne. During the Cully outbreak, Standish proved incapable of organising any systematic plan to catch the Cully gang, and after Ned Cully's capture, there were serious concerns about the inefficiency and corruption of the Victoria Police, a view shared by the 1881 Royal Commission. Frederick Charles Standish died in 1883 from cirrhosis of the liver, aged 58, and I have no idea why his grave says 1882. Checked it a million times. He died in 1883. The Standish Handicap, run at the Flemington Racecourse on New Year's Day every year, is his only memorial. Baird Neen, the former general editor of the Australian Dictionary of Biography, had this to say about Captain Standish: elegant, free and easy personality, indolent, addicted to the delights of the sideboard and the card table and the theatre. And that, my brothers, is your slightly jaundiced view of a slice of Freemasonry in the colony of Victoria. And what you're looking at there is the first lodge building built in Melbourne in 1858. It was a single-storey building. A few years later, they added the second storey on top. And as you can see there, that's what it looks like today as an apartment block. But basically, Freemasons Victoria actually forgot that used to be a lodge room. So today, there's no plaque or anything on that building to say that this was the first lodge building in Melbourne, which I think is a great pity. And it's something I wish I could have rectified. Thanks. I hope you found that mildly enjoyable. Possibly.
It was
You're still awake.
Oh no, I'm still awake. I've been listening attentively, and that's a great just piece of history. And I thank you for the time and effort you put together to actually present it in such a way. So thank you very much for making me a little smarter than I was when I started. And for dumb guys like yourself, it goes a long way.
Yes, indeed, Brendan, that was brilliant. I really enjoyed that. It gave me you gave a very good overview in a brief time of that whole period of history. That's great. I mean, I knew next to nothing about Australia, obviously, and that's very cool. So excellent job of presenting the topic to people who know nothing on the subject, other than Australia's down there somewhere. So that's very good.
And it's big. It's big.
It is apparently quite big. I did want to ask. Now, Victoria is what? Is it a state? Or what is it?
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's a state.
There are 6 states. If you want to throw up the map again of the.
Yeah, I'll go back to that map.
I did have one question, general, about Australia, not specifically the talk itself, but I'll wait for you to throw the map back up.
I'll just pop the map back up. Where'd it go? I've lost my map. Let's try that again. There we go.
You had one that had the different.
I'll just
the different.
No, that one's probably. So I'll go to the
one that had the distinctions between the.
There you
had
go.
the different ones drawn. Yeah.
Yep.
I'll move us out of the way here. Okay, so there are 7 states in Australia.
Well, this up the top. Can you see by cursor?
Yes.
That one there is called a territory. It's the Northern Territory.
Okay.
Fairly sparsely populated. Up the top is the town of Darwin, and sort of dead in the middle of Australia is a town called Alice Springs.
Okay.
Alice Springs is a hot, dusty town, and Darwin's up in the tropics. It has 2 seasons up there, hot and wet.
My question is, there are 6 states and 1 territory. Is that correct?
There are 6, and don't forget our little island.
And Tasmania is a state as well. Okay,
yep. So we have 2 territories. The second one is where the capital is, because they couldn't decide whether the capital should be Victoria or New South Wales. So as you can see here, we have the Australian Capital Territory.
Okay.
That's where basically our Washington is.
Well, so the question I have is, how is it that most of Australian states are like really big? Like the one over on the left is huge, and to the west, but Victoria is like fairly small compared to the rest of them. It just seems. I was wondering why that is.
Well, and if you take Western Australia, and they're always willing to secede from the rest of the country at any moment, it's that size because it's largely empty.
That makes sense. Okay.
That state has the claim to fame in the world as the largest electorate. One person basically has the larger top half of that state as an elected official.
Wow.
Apart from some of our indigenous inhabitants, a hell of a lot of particularly up the top of that state, is just totally uninhabited. Beautiful countryside, but very harsh.
So,
and lots of things.
That's your Wyoming.
Yes. It's also where all our mining is.
Yeah.
And right up the top coastline of there is where you and us as well have lots of spy bases and stuff.
Well, I would say it's Wyoming because if you're familiar at all with the American system, we have the Senate, which is 2 elected representatives at the state level, and then you have the House of Representatives, which is based on population. So like Virginia has, I don't know, 20 or so, I forget how many congressmen we have. Wyoming has 1 congressman and 2 senators, and it's probably one of the 10 largest states in the country in area.
Yeah.
So it's just, Wyoming's just interesting. And, you know, like we talked about Alaska earlier when we started this meeting, that there are only 12 lodges in Alaska, but Alaska still has, I'd have to look it up, but it seems like they have 5 or 6 reps. Population wise, you know, Rhode Island has like 30 times the people in Alaska. But so it's just interesting, like Wyoming is the only state that only has 1 congressman for the whole state. So they have more senators than congressmen. It's just interesting.
I think under current figures, Victoria is now the most populated state of Australia.
And one of the smallest, which is
and one of the smallest. It's also because it's one of the greenest.
Okay.
As you see, as you move up to the top of Victoria, we hit places that are called, you know, the big desert, the little desert, where we're starting to get into a hot, dry area.
But most of the country is a desert.
Yeah, red sand. If you like red dust, this is the place for you.
Very interesting. Well, I appreciate you. We can go back. Let's go ahead and
get out of that.
there. So what I like is, just as someone who doesn't know much about Australia, you gave us in a short period of time, a good overview of the whole continent and whatever, and the history and how it got started. I really appreciate that you kind of summarized it quite well. Normally you listen to a presentation and you've got question after question, like, well, what about, how is it, why is it? You did a very good job of giving us enough information to set the setting and tell the story so we could relate, without being constantly thinking like, well, wait a minute, why are they in Australia? Why is it a prison colony? What, you know what I mean? So you did a good job of introduction.
And in some respects, we're kind of like America inverted, because the further you go north, it gets warmer, tropical, and their necks get a bit more, I suppose, red.
Right.
So it's kind of the reverse. You go south, we go north.
Well, I thought you were going to say that we started out free and we're turning into a penal colony. So
I wasn't going to suggest that at all.
If I can add in a little bit here too, Brendan, you were talking about the brothels and the prostitutes and how they linked into the provincial Grand Master, and also the
Duke of Edinburgh.
Around that
imagine
same
the Duke
time,
of Edinburgh and your local Grand Master doing that today.
Yeah, but at the very same time, what I wanted to point out was that brothels were one of the first businesses to have telephones, and our parliamentarians of the day used to phone in and arrange for somebody to go to Parliament House or to a hotel, and that's where we get the name call girl from.
Oh, wow.
It comes from Victorian Parliament.
Well, how about
There you
that?
Well, actually, our first Grand Lodge building in Melbourne, they built in a street kind of one block away, but they eventually moved it because they realised that their Grand Lodge was pretty much in the brothel district.
What
Not the
seems
sort of
fitting
place.
that way. I did want to call it the first, was it Clark, your first provincial grandmaster? I just want to point this out. You know, the idea that a Mason who is doing nothing but seeking titles and does absolutely no sort of job whatsoever, that's just unheard of in Masonry today.
But that's what I mean. These are English chaps. They got these jobs purely because they were gentlemen. They were chaps, the right kind of chap.
Right, understood. But that I mean, and the guy would get all those other titles. I mean, it's hard to relate for us not being in a monarchy to all of these orders and whatever. The first thing, you know, as a young Mason, I would hear of these things like the Order of the Bath and all of these British titles. My first thought was, oh, well, that's kind of some kind of English Masonic thing. But no, those are all totally unrelated to the craft, but they're all purely symbolic and good old boys club, and you know, you're the right chap.
One of them, that one where you become the Knight Commander of the Order of St. Michael and St. George, that's the Queen's one, where they only have 100 and whatever of them, and they wear those garbs.
Yep.
No, that's a common one. The Order of the Bath is the Queen's one, or the monarch's chosen one.
He was that one as well, so he was.
But yeah, and
you've got to remember that up till 1900, Australia was an English colony still.
Right.
Whereas you guys told them to bugger off 150 years earlier, we remained an English colony till the 1900s when Australia became independent. So up to them, yeah. And look, we have a Tyler's toast where it's, to all poor and distressed brethren, a safe return to your native land if you're so desired. That means Englishmen going home. It doesn't mean other people going home, to their native land. It basically means Englishmen going home to London.
Right.
And we had here, our public service had long service leave. Still does. After 10 years, our Commonwealth public service, you get 3 months long service leave. And why it is 3 months is because it took you 1 month on a ship to get back to England. You could spend 1 month there, and then it was 1 month on a ship to come back again. So that's why they came up with. So yeah, we're very much tied to England. Thankfully, we're not anymore.
I wanted to share something with you all here, if I could. This is a Facebook thing here. This is a map of the world. The largest exporter of weapons is the U.S. Virus is China, and Independence Day is England. There are more countries. I saw this blurb a while ago. There are over 60 countries that have an Independence Day from Great Britain. That England has the record for having more countries breaking away from it than any other country in history.
Well, that's what happens when you claim an empire halfway around the world.
Well, I mean, they did manage to hold on to it for several centuries. So I give them credit for at least holding on to it for a long time. But it is interesting in our post-colonial era to look back at that and see how that changed around the world like that.
Hot button topic here at the moment, because although the date over the last couple of 100 years has changed, we now have a public holiday to commemorate that day in January when the British colony first arrived.
Mhm.
And they celebrate that as Australia Day, which for our Indigenous Aboriginal people, they still call it Invasion Day
Right.
and want the date changed. They just
I
say,
understand.
no, stop celebrating this. We're not happy.
I totally can relate.
And they got treated appallingly, shot, poisoned, all sorts of stuff.
Yep.
Is it okay to ask a question? Can I
Please?
interrupt?
Yeah, yeah.
No, please. We're done.
Yeah,
Nothing
yeah.
formal here.
First, Brother Kyne, what is your official title in the Grand Lodge of Virginia?
Australia.
Sorry.
That's what I meant.
Virginia. I have not awarded him a title yet in Virginia, but we're working on it.
We're working on it. Deputy Grand Superintendent of Education. So there's a guy above me who is the Grand Superintendent of Education.
Of Education. So let me make sure I got this right. It's put on Deputy Grand Superintendent of Education, Brendan Kyne, correct?
Yep. And I've got full bling to go with it, you know, the collar and all of that.
Right. I can add that. Do you have a picture wearing all your regalia somewhere out there on the web?
I probably do. Why do you want one?
Well, sure. And Chris, are you right worshipful or worshipful?
Me, I'm worshipful.
Worshipful.
You asking me? I'm
Yes.
just worshipful.
You're just, well, don't say just worshipful.
Little old worshipful. It's the only title I've ever sought and the only one I want. If you like, well, Brendan, if we could call on you, if you want to if you have a nice formal picture of you, if you want to post them on the Facebook group, that'd be the easiest way to make it available for David. I assume he wants to make mention of this in his lodge info or something.
Yes. I want to, I'm going to share with the Brethren Warwick Lodge, the attendance of this and how informative it was and how much I appreciated it. And I'm going to link, Chris, all the links that you have to the various Facebook pages, the web page, et cetera, just for folks to know that, you know, those types of things are available.
By all means, and once I have it on YouTube, I'll make sure that I let you know, but it will be on the group because I do post when I post a new video. I make sure I mention it on the Facebook group so people can go and watch it. So you can tell the brothers it'll be available on YouTube soon, and then you can share that link once it's available.
Yeah,
so they go back and watch it. That's why. And by the way, if you're watching I like to think of I'm in the future as well. If you're watching me on YouTube right now, please like and subscribe. I forget to do that enough, but I have to keep in mind that we're doing this right now today with all of you. But in theory, 6 months from now or a year from now, some brother is going to stumble across this video and watch it, you know, in the future. So it's kind of interesting. I have to be mindful of, you know, someone's going to see this down the road. So please like and subscribe if you're watching us right now. And it's, you know, February of 2023 right now when we're recording this. But yes, David, it will be on, I make a link to every YouTube video once it's posted so brothers know to go and watch it. And there's a playlist that you can follow that will have all of the previous ones. So there's 30 some that are out there and David's fairly new because he and I met like back in December. So he's fairly new to all the stuff we have available. I just want to make sure he knows. I think most of y'all know, but these things are on YouTube. There's about 35 videos already on YouTube going back 3 years now that we've been doing this broadcast. This not quite a podcast that I'm doing. I'm not even sure what to call this thing anymore. It's not, it's an unstated meeting. It's a podcast. I don't know what qualifies as a podcast, but someone told me it was. I don't know. I'm not sure.
I've just put a picture of myself with bling, but it does include two other guys.
Okay.
But you get the general feel. You can cut it out if you like.
Yeah, well, if you just put it on Facebook, that'll be easier for them to download. So I did have another question. Well, yeah, I mentioned the guys Masons seeking titles. I'm not used to the idea of our Masonic leaders being that disreputable. But I mean, the idea of the first guy who wasn't even an installed master, and he was promoted.
The second guy.
And he was promoted to basically Grand Master. Now, just to clarify for everybody else out there, England being as large as it is, the United Grand Lodge England, they have provincial grandmasters who have authority over, say, Canada, Australia, and whatever. So they're essentially grandmaster for Australia, but they're still under the United Grand Lodge of England. We don't quite have that title, but these guys are just, I guess, appointed. They're not provincial grandmasters are appointed, not elected. Correct. So in Australia, if you had to elect somebody, who's the highest person you as a Mason can elect in Australia to represent you?
Well, now that we're an independent country, we no longer have.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. You are your own Grand Lodge. I'm sorry. I forget. Yes.
We do, though, have remnants like Western Australia, that large state, still has something like 16 Scottish lodges under the Scottish Constitution, and they have still a provincial Grand Master there.
Okay.
We've got half a dozen English lodges left sprayed around the country, and I think there's one Irish lodge left as well.
Okay. Well,
if you just go across the ditch a little to New Zealand, when they formed a Grand Lodge, it didn't go really well. So you've got the New Zealand Grand Lodge, a provincial Grand Lodge of Scotland, a provincial Grand Lodge of England, and a provincial Grand Lodge of Ireland.
oh my God.
All four
Still around.
institutions still exist.
Let me rephrase the question then. When you were still a provisional Grand Lodge of England, what's the highest person that you would elect?
We wouldn't elect anyone.
No one. Everyone is appointed. Even today, that's how it is. Okay.
No, not today, but back then. The would have been by the Grand Master in England. So I appoint you to this role.
Right.
And then that Grand Master would appoint his team. No
So
one
do you know
was elected.
today, what would it be? Let's say in New Zealand or whatever.
Here in Victoria, we see the actual membership does not vote for the Grand Master, but there is a group of, you got to be above a certain rank and all the rest, and there's a select group of them that choose from half a dozen candidates. So we don't actually, however, in New South, it varies from state to state. In New South Wales, the membership actually elects their Grand Master.
Now, okay, so let me ask, Jonathan, I'll call on you in 1 second. Just to wrap up for me. So do you have separate Grand Lodges across Australia?
Every state, like yourself, has a separate
there
Grand
is
Lodge.
no Grand Lodge of Australia per se. You are completely independent now. Okay, got it. Thank you. All right, Jonathan, you've been waiting. You had a question?
Yes, but more of a comment, and I was actually because I first of all I just want to say hi to Worshipful Smallridge. He knows me as one of his members of Warwick. But so I've actually had the pleasure of going to Australia, and I visited the Grand Lodge over at Brisbane, which I believe falls under Queensland. And I just gotta say that I had an amazing time with the brothers down there. We went out, we did some community service, and then we went and grabbed some beers and had a fantastic lunch. I actually tried some kangaroo burger. And I just want to say that the presentation was very well delivered. I almost can envision the guys just running around and doing crazy stuff. But I just want to just say that I really enjoyed the presentation and also that fellowship that I had back in almost 10 years ago.
Wow.
And they do like drinking beer in Queensland.
Yeah.
It's a lot hotter. They drink bucket loads of it.
But not Foster's. You all don't drink Foster's at all.
No, not really. No. That's an export beer.
I know that's like an American that we assume. But that's all you drink? It's Australian for beer. That's what the commercial tells me.
Yeah.
David, you had a comment? Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I appreciated the, contrary to popular belief, everyone loves a little bit of a suck up. And Jonathan, thanks for the recognition. and just FYI, I have already made a post on the Warwick Lodge. I was able to grab that picture pretty quickly, and Yeah, just excellent, excellent. I'm just going to say what Jonathan said again is the presentation was well done, and you raised my eyebrow. The debauchery and that was rooted when it was in the. Did you call it an upclass brothel?
Yeah, an upper class brothel. Yeah.
Yeah. And
by the clientele, pretty much.
Yeah, if you're taking the Duke of Edinburgh there, it's not a shady one.
That's right. Only the most reputable of brothels.
Right.
Yes, that's correct.
The polarization of debauchery and the fact that what we're really looking to do is make good men better. And so the history of what went on and the fact that is super intriguing, and I think it happens everywhere. Some places cover it up a little bit better than others, but I really appreciate the context of it all. I really do.
It just got to open your eyes on things.
I can tell you that most of those stories you've heard this morning have been swept under the carpet. They're not in any of our Masonic history books. We don't like to tell stories about our Grand Masters like that, but I'm sorry, the first couple were totally disreputable, really.
I find it quite interesting, and again, I'll be the first to admit, Brendan, that I'm hardly a historian. I try to play one on TV here, but my knowledge of England has been expanded by watching shows like The Crown and currently Downton Abbey, and I realize that's a very narrow and somewhat fictionalized, or somewhat skewed version of things. But watching The Crown, honestly, and I know it was done based on books that were written, and there is some dramatization for TV. I get that is not completely historically accurate, but still, it really humanized Prince Philip for me, showing him and young Queen Elizabeth, and when he was running around. And I haven't been able to verify whether he was a Mason or not. I believe he belonged to a lot of those other sort of social clubs, like some of the ones you mentioned. I don't think Philip was a Mason because he would have been Grand Master. But again, I don't know, because he's the Prince Consort. He wasn't the Prince or the King. So he wouldn't have been. I don't believe he was. But it humanized him. But I remember him there were several trips to Australia over the course of that show. Prince Philip went, and then Prince Charles went. And to me, it humanized Prince Philip, and it showed him as a young man, as a young military officer. He's in an arranged marriage, basically, and he's like the third cousin of his wife, and the families are related and all that. But he tries to, he's trying to enjoy himself and do all this wild stuff that his buddy apparently is the real debaucher, but he's not. He's hardly a saint. But his buddy, his traveling buddy from his club, who was also on his ship when they go out and went to Australia and did like a tour of the Pacific and all kinds of hedonist stuff going on. But then Jonathan Pryce plays him in the last series, and puts a whole different spin on it. But he's very much, it's like, my job as the Prince Consort is to keep the machine running, to slap the hand of all of the royals in the family who are going astray. It's like, look, the boss, and they call her the boss, being the queen. Prince Philip's job is to basically be the XO, to make sure that everything keeps running in this machine that is the royal family. And it's all about, it's a different world to me, but I can relate to it. Even though it's somewhat fictionalized, I'm taking it as basically accurate. His job is to make sure that they, as the royal family, keep operating, and they all do what they have to do. This is why they got so upset with Diana for speaking out publicly. You don't speak out. You don't air our dirty laundry for the public. We need the public to look up to us as role models, in effect, and we all have to work together. But they had every kind of scandal you can imagine going on in the house, but his job was keep us on track. And it was a very interesting, the relationship between him and the Queen over the years. It was not a great romance. Edward and Mrs. Simpson had a better romance in that show than anyone. They were in love. But Philip, it was more like a business arrangement, and him and the Queen had their whole relationship was told very well in that story. And it gave me a vision on a world that I don't relate to at all as an American who grew up in the later part of this century and last century. I just want to say it's kind of neat that you're adding more pieces to the puzzle with the Australian aspect of England. But
fess up that I'm 100% of Irish background. You know,
Okay.
my ancestors came out as convicts. So I have an extremely jaundiced view of the English.
Yes.
English. But no, the first two provincial Grand Masters were Master Masons.
Yep.
The third provincial Grand Master, who eventually becomes our Grand Master of our own United Grand Lodge, was also a Master Mason.
Mhm.
And then his successor, Lord Brassey, another Englishman we got out here to be our Grand Master, he was also a Master Mason. So the first four were Master Masons when they were made Grand Masters, all because they were English chaps.
Well, I'm sorry, you clarify, when you say Master Mason, what do you mean?
I mean, a third degree Master Mason.
Okay.
They've done their third degree, no further.
Oh, as opposed
And
to not being a past master or anything.
Yeah, so they've gone
Okay. Only, yes. Well, we don't want to say only because every one of you brothers, even if you're not a past master.
Yeah, no, but I mean,
but yeah, they never
normally this is a
held any
qualification.
office and they jumped to be Grand Master, is your point.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, the second guy, or the first guy, was the junior deacon in his lodge, and he's gone straight up to Grand Master.
Right. Whereas, of course, here, virtually every American, and even I'm sure pretty much today everywhere, but you have to be master of your lodge. You may get some district office. You may be district deputy grandmaster in Virginia. I think that's typical for most. So you're the grandmaster's representatives for 6 or 10 lodges for a year. Maybe you become a grand officer, a grand junior steward or something. Then you eventually get in line as a grand junior deacon. Then you become grandmaster. You've had elected and appointed offices to give you leadership training to prepare you to be Grand Master.
And that's the same in England. Yeah,
And this is a guy just picked off the street, basically.
The first four of them, because they were the right kind of chaps, they've gone, you can be Grand Master.
But also, I mean, in fairness, you don't have an infrastructure. I don't know how many years Masonry had been around by then, but you didn't really have an infrastructure of cultivating past masters to be available. So there's that.
No, like the guy I briefly mentioned, that John Stevens, when he came to Melbourne, Victoria, and helped form the first English lodge, when they came round to doing the installation, he was the only guy that knew the oral ritual. So he did the consecration of the lodge, the installation of the master, and the investiture of all the officers, because nobody else knew it.
Right. I've been in this situation. I've shown up at a lodge. Can you do this? Sure.
Yes.
I just wanted to.
Go ahead, Graham.
Can I just ask Brendan, where did George Emery fit into this? Was he a fourth or fifth, or was he Mason, Master Mason?
No, Emery. He may have actually
1907.
Yes, no, he was one of our Grand Masters, wasn't he?
That's right, 1907, I think.
Yeah, well, our United Grand Lodge started in 1889. So anyone after 1889 is in theory, a local Grand Master, but the first couple weren't, they were imported. Actually, our first Grand Master was the richest man in the state, the largest landholder, and was what they call it, a Bart. Queen Victoria had given him a hereditary title, which still exists today. So he was a Sir. Extremely wealthy man. They've built a train station for him so he could get to his country estate easily. Had his own militia out on his country estate. You don't want any of those peasants getting around the place, so he had his own armed militia. Just wild times, really.
Oh, I'm sorry, was it Jonathan? Was someone trying to pipe in? I'm
Yes,
trying not to
Jonathan
monopolize
was.
the conversation here, Brendan, but
Yes.
go ahead, Jonathan.
I was just gonna say, I found it fitting because just this morning, prior to watching, prior to getting on this platform, I was watching a video that the Grand Lodge, the United Grand Lodge of England, released, which was it's on YouTube, and it's basically talking about when the United Grand Lodge was formed in 1723, and they actually show how the first Grand Master was picked and why he was picked, and it was because of his status and what he can do to increase the membership. And thereafter, they went on to mention how many more lodges went on to open in result of that. So I can, it's just funny that you all are mentioning that now, and I just saw that video where it kind of depicts all of that happening.
Well, you have to remember that in England since 1721, every single Grand Master has been a peer of the realm. Means
Yes.
they've got a title, a royal title of some sort, from right up the top to down to just being,
Well, my understanding is that basically whoever the senior most royal who is a Master Mason is Grand Master. That's why it's been the Duke of Kent for decades now, the same fella. If Charles was a Mason, which he is not, if King Charles were a Mason, he would now be Grand Master. And as Prince Charles, he outranks the Duke of Kent. He would have been Grand Master years ago.
they had their hopes pinned on Harry, but that hasn't worked out for them.
I will say this just about Prince Charles, and I've noticed this in watching The Crown, and it's funny to have you bring your own perspective to things. Prince Charles, and I almost feel sympathy for the man. He basically is 73 years old and just now had his first job. And I'm trying not to be, I mean, it's not his fault. He was born into this. It's monarchies work if everybody lives to be like 35. And then you die and your child takes over in their 20s, and then they die and their child. You generally don't even have a queen mother that often because people don't live long enough as a grandmother to see their child become king. But the thing is, Charles had nothing to do for most of his life. Once he's fitted to be king and he's trained and all that, there's nothing for him to do but just sort of hang around. I was thinking, honestly, if he had joined Masonry and devoted his life as he had a job. I mean, he had an income. He had no real responsibilities. He would have been perfect as a Grand Master because he could have devoted all his energy into growing Masonry in England, and it could be a full-time job. Like we have Grand Masters here who retire before they become Grand Master so they can travel. He could have devoted himself to Masonry or something else, and basically do that because there wasn't a lot of duties on his time waiting around to be king. Just a thought. That's what occurred to me when I saw it.
They always appoint a provincial Grand Master below them.
Yes.
So they're meant to be a figurehead. Really, we don't want you to get involved.
Well, but it would have given him something to do.
They have an experienced Mason to do the work. Well, you're just a figurehead. We roll out. But I mean,
quite honestly, he had time to be an active Mason. He had time to. Well, I mean, I don't know how it would work because, like, actually, no, because his father wasn't. No, his father would have. Yeah, by the time he was born, he was already locked in. I'm just saying. Let's say Harry then is a better example.
Hey, Chris.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I had this conversation with Great Britain a week ago Thursday. Mm-hmm. The Duke of York is the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of England, not the monarch. They actually forbid the monarch from being.
No.
Duke of Kent, I think.
The Duke of Kent, yes. And he has been for it. But the king has been. If the king is a Mason, he would be Grand Master.
They changed the
I think
bylaws.
Alan's right there.
The monarch cannot be the Grand Master.
Oh, okay. Well, that would make sense.
Just
He
like
wasn't one-
you shouldn't be the uh, trustee and the master at the same time.
Right.
Kind of like
Did
too
you-
much clump in one pocket.
Did you see the interesting article this week? Now that Elon Musk has bought Twitter, the Twitter building in London is in dispute with their landlord over rent, and they've taken the matter to court. Guess who the landlord is? The king.
Oh, really?
They're not going to win that one, I can tell you.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Well, I was going to say, but if Prince William, for example, had a number of years before he still has time before he's going to be king. But if Prince William had joined a lodge, he could have gone through the checks. He could have been master of a lodge. He could have actually built the experience we would expect out of a Masonic leader. And then when the time came, he could be Grand Master as when his father becomes king, he becomes the Duke of what is he? What is he again?
It's confusing, Edinburgh.
What is William? He's the Prince of Wales. Sorry, Prince of Wales. I don't know why I don't remember that. Prince of Wales is the second highest office under the king, so he would be Grand Master right now. But he could have been a Mason. I guess that would be a good story to write, a good fictional story about Prince William at a young age realizes seeing his dad spending 30 years at the time and not any chance of being king. I need to find something to do with my life. I'm going to join Masonry. And he becomes the Grand Master when his dad becomes king. I don't know. Just a crazy idea. Maybe I'll write a book on that. I don't know. I find it fascinating because we are so unlike that here.
Yeah, it's odd. There's still their deference to their monarchy. It really is. It's like the First World War was a war between the royal family.
Right.
They're all related. All the kings and queens of Europe were related.
Right. So it was a family.
It was during the First World War that the English royal family changed their name from Strathcoburg Gotha to their current name, where they picked one of their Windsor. So
Windsor,
they're now called
yes.
Windsor. But their original German family name is Strathcoburg Gotha. So you're suddenly at a war with Germany, and your royal family is from the house of Strathcoburg Goth. You're going to go. So they changed it to Windsor.
Oh, and to change topics, but within the paper now, the Memphis, it's not Memphis Mizraim, but that's what it's called today. But the Memphis Lodge. So it was a clandestine lodge. It was the only lodge in an area where a lot of people lived because they were all mining for gold. So a lot of people in one area, only a functioning lodge. Everyone who wanted to be a Mason joined that lodge, and they're irregular. And then
they're all happy.
And the Grand Lodge of the Provincial Grand Lodge finally figures out, oh, wait a minute, you guys are irregular and you're the biggest lodge in our area. So they just basically do a patch over and say, hey, guess what? You're all regular Masons now. We don't need to have you all petition. We don't need to have everybody get reinitiated and start over. We basically just kind of, like I said, do a patch over. They're all regular Masons now.
They did make a couple get reinitiated just for a bit of, show. We're doing the right thing. We're doing the right thing.
But all of that's, I think you're probably you uncovered something that I've never even heard of. A irregular lodge that basically became a regular lodge.
And the strange thing is, it's a much kind of bigger story. But the local Masons at the time sent past masters to the French Lodge, and they came back and went, everything's fine. I've seen their warrant. I've seen their work. It's the same as us. And the local Masons were happy, but someone else wasn't. Someone else figured out that, hang on, this thing's dodgy.
But now and again, I've done a paper on the rites in England, in Europe rather, the Reformed Scottish Rite and the Swedish Rite and the rectified Scottish Rite and the strict observance, all of that stuff. And Memphis Mizraim, for some reason I missed it, maybe because there wasn't a prominent Grand Lodge in Europe anymore that's Memphis Mizraim. But someone asked me after they saw that paper, what about Memphis Mizraim? Why don't you talk about that? And I'm like, I never heard of it. So I'm curious, is the ritual close enough to English Constitution ritual?
It's European, so it's different. They deliberately didn't want to be English, and it was founded by a brother called his family name was Marconus de Negre, which translates in English to Black Mason. I'm just curious, but it kept getting closed down by the authorities and opened up again. And during the various opening up stages, he kept increasing the degrees. I think they got up to 99 or 100.
Yes.
Hence, some of those guys listed themselves as the 56th degree and stuff.
Yeah, it seems like that's like a show, like in the Scottish Rite. You know, you have the 14th, the 18th, the 30th, and the 32nd in each of the four bodies. So you refer yourself as a 14th degree Mason or a Scottish Rite Mason or an 18th degree, because in other countries other than the US, you typically have to go years between each house before you get the next set of degrees. Where in America, one weekend you go from 3rd to 32nd. So you would have 18th degree Masons. So 56 was obviously a plateau where you got from the 41st to the 56th. And then there's another plateau after that, maybe. I don't know.
It was also a cash cow for Marconus de Negre.
Oh, I'm sure it was. You have to pay for
Involved
your
a
degree.
fee, yes, and your certificate, and there's probably regalia. So yeah, you make money.
David,
out of it.
you had a question?
Yeah, Chris. I have to go. My son is at a district band concert that I'm going to go see, so I am backing out of the conversation. And I just want to thank everyone for being here, and thank you, Chris, for arranging for this. And I just appreciate all the work that goes into it.
Well, thank you. If you hang for 1 sec, Dave, I'll do the closeout thing. I want to mention our next unstated meeting is February 18th, and that's going to be Worshipful Jason Hicks is from he's from the I think he's from the Research Lodge of Tennessee. Jason Hicks will be speaking on J. Raymond Shute, who was a prolific Mason in North Carolina. He helped found the North Carolina Lodge of Research number 666 and founded about a dozen different Masonic bodies, such as the Allied Masonic Degrees, Knight Masons, Knights of York, Crest of Honor. So J. Raymond Shute did a lot in North Carolina to establish a whole bunch of Masonic bodies that most are still operating today. The Lodge of Research isn't. So I just want to make sure I plug that before you leave, David. That's in 2 weeks. So thanks for being here, Dave.
All right. Thank you, Chris. We'll see you later, Worshipful. And thank you.
All right. Yeah. So, yeah, I want to make sure I mention that. I'll say that in addition to J. Raymond Shute, another fellow, Williams something, I forget his name right now, the two of them founded most of these bodies in North Carolina, and their names keep cropping up. I see them in research papers. So it's fun that the more I read and the more I have these things, the same names, we keep intersecting. I keep saying, oh, yeah, I've already read a paper about that guy. Here's some more information. So that should be a lot of fun. That's on the 18th.
Did you really say that particular research lodge was numbered
666? That was, they chose that name, that number. I think as a little tweak of some people, maybe, but yes. And that one is no longer
in a fortnight, Brendan.
Pardon?
What's that?
You'll have to stay up in a fortnight, Brendan, to hear all about that.
Yeah,
I will.
Yep, it'll be in 2 weeks. But I'm really, Jason Hicks gave a talk last year about Sam Houston in Texas. A very good talk. So I'm glad. I like having speakers come back again. And of course, Brendan, if you have another presentation, I think we talked, you have a few that you do, don't you?
Oh, I do a couple.
Okay, so we will like to bring you back at some point.
Well, our Victorian Lodge of Research, we now Zoom the speaker part of our meeting each month. So we
very good.
Call off the lodge meeting, And then we allow Zoom participants to join us for the speaker part, which also allows us now to have speakers that aren't in the room.
Yes.
So we're not restricting ourselves to someone. So for our October meeting this year, we've got Brother Alexander Herbert, who you may have heard of. He's over from, I think, California. And he does one, A Starry Decked Heaven, Freemasonry and Space Flight.
Wow.
I first caught him at a Canadian presentation, and I thought I'd grab him for our lodge. So you should keep an eye out
Yes,
for him.
please make sure you remind me.
Well,
about
he's in one of your jurisdictions. I forget which one. Sorry, Brother Alexander Herbert, Right Worshipful Brother Alexander Herbert.
I want to thank all of my brothers for attending. I think a couple people dropped off, but thank you all. Anybody else have any comments or questions for Brendan before we wrap it up? Nope.
I haven't put Alan to sleep on the wheel, so that's good.
That's right. Alan's still driving. Like he's eating.
No, I'm parked. I'm just watching the show.
Okay, good. Well, we do appreciate you tuning in. I mean, he's always driving on Saturdays, it seems, so he always makes a point to join us, and that's good. In fact, Alan will message me and it's like, why hasn't the meeting started yet? Because there isn't one this Saturday. So he is dedicated, so we admire
You got
that.
to rub that one in for a couple of years, aren't you, Chris?
Well, no, because I appreciate it. You're at the door waiting to come in. Believe me, if I could do these every week, I would. It'd probably be easier for people to remember, but I can't line up speakers. I can't commit to every Saturday. And lining up speakers is the hardest part. All right, brothers. Well, thank you all for coming. Appreciate everybody. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Brendan, this was excellent. And I love how it all adds to the knowledge I already have. The longer I've been doing this, the more I see where I know this piece and this piece, and you bring in something else and it relates to stuff I already know. And that's great. It's not like it's all new. It's like everything's starting to fit in with other pieces. And I really like that. It's like I feel like I'm building on my knowledge. It's not just like, oh, that was cool. Alchemy. All right. And that's all I know. It's starting to see where this piece ties to this piece and it all fits together. And I see how it interrelates, like the Memphis Mizraim rite that I already knew about. And you just added something else as color to that. I'll probably mention that. I'll probably come back and reference your stuff when I get around to doing a Memphis rite paper.
And I think it's a fabulous connection that we got that warrant from an American brother in the 1960s.
Yes,
who found
isn't that
somewhere.
great?
Colonel Lionel Van Chuck said, "Hey, I think this is yours." And sent
Absolutely.
It back. All right.
All right. Y'all take care. Thanks again. Everybody have a good day. See you all
Speak soon. Bye, Chris.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, Chris.